The slap echoed through the first-class cabin like a gunshot. Clint Eastwood had barely lifted his hand to place his boarding pass on the seat when the flight attendant, Ms. Harper, sharp uniform, sharp voice, sharper attitude, smacked his hand away as if swatting an insect. "Get out of first class," she snapped, loud enough for the entire front cabin to turn their heads. "You don't belong here. People like you always try to sneak in." Clint didn't move. Didn't raise his voice. Didn't even blink. He simply looked at her with the same calm, steady expression he'd had since walking through the terminal. A few passengers gasped. A few pulled out their phones. A middle-aged man whispered to his wife. "Is she seriously yelling at him?" She whispered back. "I don't think she knows who he is." But Ms. Harper wasn't listening to anyone. Her rage was already in motion. She stepped closer, invading his space. "You heard me. Your ticket is fake. Your seat is not here. Get up before I call security to drag you out." Clint opened his mouth, gently, to speak. "Ma'am, I think you're making a mistake." But she cut him off with a raised hand, then grabbed his boarding pass right out of his fingers. "Enough. I'm done talking to you." Her fingers tightened around the ticket. "You should be grateful I don't have you removed for causing trouble." Without giving him a chance to reply, she ripped the boarding pass in half. 2 small pieces fluttered to the carpet like fallen leaves. The entire cabin froze. Someone in business attire whispered, "Oh no, she's in trouble now." Another muttered, "This is going to go viral." But Clint just stood there, neutral, collected, almost impossibly calm for a man who had just been publicly humiliated. His silence wasn't weakness. It was a warning no one understood yet. Ms. Harper scoffed, rolling her eyes dramatically. "What are you waiting for? Move." Economy is that way. Every passenger held their breath, waiting for him to explode, argue, yell. But he didn't. He simply stepped back, nodded once, and said quietly, "Ma'am, you truly have no idea." Those words hung in the air. Heavy, mysterious, unsettling. Because in less than 2 minutes, every soul inside that plane would learn the truth. And nothing, not the cabin, not the crew, not Ms. Harper's career, would ever be the same again. The airport had been a storm of chaos that morning. Delays flashed across every screen, long lines twisted around pillars, and stressed-out passengers argued with staff over missed connections. Terminal 4 felt like a pressure cooker ready to blow. And in the middle of all that noise, walked Clint Eastwood. No entourage. No security. No special treatment. Just a calm man in a simple jacket, hands in his pockets, walking with the quiet confidence of someone who had nothing to prove. He didn't push past anyone. He didn't shout or complain. He simply moved through the crowd with that unmistakable presence, one that some recognized but were too shy to confirm. Meanwhile, inside the first-class boarding area, Ms. Harper was on a power trip. "Move. Move. Boarding is not a buffet line," she barked at a pair of elderly passengers. Passengers exchanged nervous glances. One whispered, "Why is she acting like she owns the airline?" Another muttered, "Just don't make eye contact. She'll pick on you next." Her reputation wasn't new. Everyone knew she treated passengers like obstacles instead of people. To her, the uniform wasn't a job, it was a throne. And today, with all the delays and pressure, her arrogance was dialed to maximum. When Clint walked up to the counter, she didn't even give him a full glance. Just a quick eye scan from his jacket to his boots, and she instantly decided he was beneath her. "Yes," she snapped. "Can I help you?" Clint placed his boarding pass gently on the counter. "First class," he said politely. She stared at the ticket like it was a joke. "Ma'am." "Sure. And I'm the Queen of England." She held up the ticket between 2 fingers as if it were dirty. "This seat is for first-class passengers only. Real first-class passengers." A nearby clerk flinched at her tone but stayed silent. He had seen her treat others the same way, sometimes worse, but he needed his job. No one dared interfere. Clint remained unbothered. "I'm just taking the seat assigned to me," he replied softly. Ms. Harper laughed under her breath. "Oh, trust me. Someone like you doesn't get an assigned first-class seat. I'll check the system. Maybe you won a raffle or something. She typed aggressively, slamming the keys, making a show of it. Passengers watched from the side. A woman whispered to her friend, "Why is she being so rude?" Her friend replied, "She likes to prove she has control." The clerk at the back, Mr. Reynolds, a quiet older man, kept watching Clint closely. There was something familiar, but he couldn't place it. After a long pause, Miss Harper leaned forward, lips curled into a smirk. Well, well. Looks like the system shows a first-class seat, but I don't buy it." She snapped the ticket shut between her fingers. "These things glitch all the time. Probably a mistake." Clint offered the same calm line. "I think you're misunderstanding something." But she wasn't listening. She never listened. "Misunderstanding? No, you misunderstand me," she said, tapping her name badge. "I decide who sits here. And you're not it." She stepped out from behind the counter. Her heels clicked sharply on the floor as she walked right up to him. "You will go back to economy, or you will exit my plane. Period. End of discussion." Clint didn't move. Didn't argue. Didn't show even a hint of anger. His silence only made her more furious. Behind them, another wave of passengers checked in. Phones were pointed subtly. People sensed something big was about to happen. And the older clerk, Reynolds, finally leaned toward his colleague and whispered, "That face, that voice. I know who that is." But before he could finish the thought, Miss Harper raised her hand, and the moment of disrespect that would change everything forever took place. What she didn't know, what no one knew yet, was that the man she was humiliating didn't just belong in first class. He belonged to the entire airline. And the truth was moments away from detonating like a thunderclap. The slap wasn't loud this time, but it was sharp enough to slice the air. Ms. Harper's palm smacked Clint's knuckles as he reached for the overhead bin, the sting echoing more in spirit than sound. "I said you are not placing anything up there," she snapped. Her voice rang through the cabin like a drill instructor losing patience. "That space is for real first-class passengers, not people pretending to be important." Every head in the front cabin jerked toward them. A young businessman whispered, "Oh no, she's really doing this." A woman covered her mouth. Another passenger muttered, "This is going to be a lawsuit." But Clint just lowered his hand with the grace of someone who still refused to escalate. He spoke in the same calm tone he'd used from the beginning. "Ma'am, please try to understand. I'm just—" "No," she cut him off. Her voice was louder this time. Angrier. More determined to show the cabin who held the power. "You think I don't know your type? Dress to blend in, act polite, hope no one notices you sneaking into a seat you didn't pay for." She leaned closer, eyes narrowed. "I've seen this act before." Passengers shifted uncomfortably. Some recorded cautiously, phones angled low. Others stared in disbelief, especially those who recognized the figure standing there so silently. Clint took a small breath. Not of fear. Not of frustration. Just patience. "I'm not here to cause trouble," he said quietly. But quiet wasn't what she wanted. She wanted submission. "You already have caused trouble," she hissed. She snatched the folded boarding pass from his hand. "And I'm ending it. Without hesitation. Without even checking." She tore the pass clean in half. 2 pieces fluttered down the aisle. The silence that followed was thicker than the cabin air at cruising altitude. The businessman whispered, "She's finished." A woman shook her head, eyes wide. How can she not recognize him? Even the junior attendant froze, gripping her serving tray with trembling fingers. Ms. Harper held up the shredded ticket like a trophy. "This is trash. Just like the stunt you're pulling." Clint stared at the torn pieces on the floor. Not angry. Just disappointed. He looked up at her slowly. "Why are you treating me this way?" he asked. Genuinely asking. Not challenging. Not provoking. Just seeking an answer. Her voice rose again. "Because I know who belongs up here, and I know who doesn't." She pointed toward the back of the plane. "Economy is that way. If you don't go, security will come." The junior attendant whispered to a nearby passenger. "I don't think this is going the way she thinks it is." Meanwhile, the older clerk from earlier, Mr. Reynolds, had just stepped onto the aircraft from the jet bridge. He stopped dead the moment he saw Clint. His eyes widened. His breath hitched. He leaned to a coworker and whispered urgently, "That's Clint Eastwood. The Clint Eastwood. What is she doing?" But Miss Harper still had no idea. She crossed her arms, chin raised, the image of authority she believed she possessed. "You have 10 seconds to move," she warned. Passengers looked around, tense, uncomfortable, waiting for Clint to unleash his anger. But he didn't. Instead, he gently picked up the torn boarding pass pieces. He brushed the dust off them as if they were something precious. Then he looked at her, steady, calm, almost pitying. "You truly have no idea what you've just done," he said softly. The sentence floated through the cabin like a cold breeze. Ms. Harper scoffed dramatically. "Oh, please. Spare me the drama. You're nobody. Sit where you belong." But before Clint could reply, before anyone could breathe, the cabin door opened. 3 airline executives stepped inside, searching urgently, scanning row by row. What happened next would flip the entire plane upside down. And it would land harder on Ms. Harper than any turbulence ever could. The cabin door swung open with a firm metallic click, and every head turned instinctively toward the sudden movement. 3 sharply dressed airline executives stepped inside, 2 men, 1 woman, each with badges gleaming and folders clutched tightly in their hands. Their faces carried urgency, the kind of urgency that didn't belong to flight delays or passenger complaints. Passengers straightened in their seats. Some stopped recording. Others started recording. But Ms. Harper didn't notice them yet. She was too busy glaring at Clint, arms folded like she'd just won a battle. "Finally," she muttered, rolling her eyes. "Security must be here to remove you." Clint didn't reply. He didn't need to. His silence had more weight than her words ever could. Mr. Reynolds, the older clerk who had recognized him earlier, slipped quietly into the aisle behind the executives, watching intensely. He looked like a man watching a slow-motion disaster he couldn't stop. The executives paused at the front of the cabin, scanning the passengers like they were searching for someone specific. Their eyes moved from row to row, until they landed on Clint Eastwood. The lead executive inhaled sharply, nearly stumbling forward. "There," he whispered to the others. "That's him." Passengers exchanged confused looks. A woman muttered, "Him? What does that mean?" The businessman from earlier whispered, "Oh, she's done. She's so done." But Ms. Harper still hadn't turned around. She was too focused on maintaining control. "Well," she snapped, gesturing toward Clint, "this man is causing trouble. I need him removed from first class immediately." The junior attendant flinched. The executives froze. Then, slowly, the lead executive stepped forward. "Ma'am," he said carefully, "who exactly do you think you're speaking to?" She scoffed, waving dismissively. "A nobody trying to sneak into first class. A rule breaker. Someone who thinks he can fool us with a fake ticket." The passengers collectively sucked in a breath. The executives exchanged stunned glances. Finally, the lead executive stepped fully between Clint and Ms. Harper, his voice shaking with a mix of fear and disbelief. "Ms. Harper, that man is not a nobody." She frowned deeply. "Oh, please. Don't tell me he's some VIP actor or something. I don't care about celebrity privilege." Mr. Reynolds whispered urgently, "Turn around. Look at his face." Her annoyance flared. "Look at—" "Why should I?" But she did. Slowly, stiffly, she turned. And the moment her eyes truly landed on Clint Eastwood, really saw him, the color drained from her face like water down a drain. Her lips parted. Her breath caught. Her posture collapsed from arrogance to confusion. That's, she stuttered. Clint simply nodded once. But the executives weren't done. The female executive stepped forward, holding a folder with embossed gold lettering. "Ms. Harper, this man is Clint Eastwood," she said. "Not only a world-renowned figure, but also the new majority owner of Skylux Airlines." A gasp rippled through the cabin. A wave of whispers. Phones lifted again. Ms. Harper's knees buckled slightly. She reached instinctively for the seat beside her. The owner, she croaked. He owns the airline. The lead executive nodded firmly. Yes. Effective as of this morning. He came here today to quietly observe the airline he now controls. A thick silence rolled across the cabin. The kind of silence that came right before the universe delivered consequences. Clint remained still. Calm. Respectful. Not triumphant. Not arrogant. Just steady. Passengers stared at him with new eyes. Some in awe. Some embarrassed for how they had doubted. Others shaking their heads at Ms. Harper's downfall. She swallowed hard, voice barely above a whisper. I didn't know. I swear, I didn't know who you were. Clint's answer came slow and soft. You shouldn't need to know who someone is to treat them with respect. The words hit the cabin like a silent thunderbolt. No shouting. No anger. Just truth. And it was louder than any slap, scream, or insult that had come before. The cabin felt frozen in time. Ms. Harper stood there trembling, the torn boarding pass still lying on the floor like evidence of her arrogance. Passengers watched with wide eyes, phones raised, hearts pounding as if they were witnessing the climax of a movie rather than a real-life moment. And then, the lead executive stepped aside, allowing Clint to move forward, but he didn't. He stayed where he was, calm as the center of a hurricane. The female executive cleared her throat and opened the golden embossed folder she held. Ladies and gentlemen, she announced, her voice steady but reverent, it is my honor to formally welcome Mr. Clint Eastwood, the newest majority owner of Skylux Airlines. A collective gasp rolled through the cabin like a breaking wave. People looked at each other in disbelief. Some stood. Some clapped. Some whispered, I knew it. I thought that was him. A young passenger muttered under his breath. How did she not recognize him? Even the junior attendant stared at Clint as if seeing a legend come to life. But Ms. Harper. She looked like the floor beneath her had disappeared. Her voice shook uncontrollably. I don't understand. This can't be real. You own the airline. The male executive nodded. Yes. His acquisition finalized this morning. That's why we rushed onto the aircraft, to greet him, to thank him, and to ensure he received the respect he deserves. A ripple of murmurs moved through the passengers. One woman leaned toward her seatmate and whispered, Oh, she's finished. This is career-ending. Another whispered, Honestly, she earned this. A man near the window tapped his phone screen and whispered to his camera, If you're watching this, comment right now, should she be fired or forgiven? The engagement spread. Passengers began whispering, Fire her. Give her a second chance. She needs to learn. Maybe he'll surprise us. But Clint remained silent through it all. The female executive turned back to Ms. Harper. Do you have anything to say, Ms. Harper? Any explanation for your behavior toward the owner of your airline? Ms. Harper's throat tightened. Words stumbled out, broken and desperate. I didn't know who he was. I swear I didn't. He looked so plain. I just thought he didn't belong here. The older clerk, Mr. Reynolds, stepped forward with quiet authority. That's the problem, he said gently. You judged before you served. And that's the opposite of what our job is. The junior attendant nodded in agreement. Ms. Harper turned to Clint, eyes filling with panic. Please, sir. I'm begging you. Don't punish me. I made a mistake. Passengers leaned in. Some whispered, He should fire her. Others whispered, He's too wise for that. He'll teach a lesson. One passenger even spoke aloud. Sir, forgive her. Show her mercy. Another countered, No. She humiliated him. Actions have consequences. The entire cabin became a live poll of human judgment. Clint finally looked at her. Not cruelly. Not triumphantly. Just with the calm weight of someone who had seen people rise and fall for decades. Ms. Harper, he said softly, you weren't wrong because you didn't know who I was. She blinked rapidly, confused. Then he continued. You were wrong because you didn't care who I was. The words echoed through the aircraft. No music. No sound effects. Just truth. Passengers felt it in their chest. Some nodded quietly. Some whispered, "That's deep." Clint took a small step closer. Respect shouldn't depend on status, wealth, or appearance, he said. It should be your default, not your selective choice. The executives exchanged looks. Ms. Harper swallowed hard, tears building. Clint glanced around the cabin deliberately, letting every passenger feel included in what came next. Then he asked, a question to the whole plane. What do you think? Should she be fired or forgiven? Gasps erupted. Phones lifted. People whispered urgently. The whole cabin buzzed with electricity. Clint didn't say another word. He let the moment belong to everyone. A moment of truth. A moment of reflection. And a moment the world would soon debate. The atmosphere inside the private hangar felt different now, quieter, heavier, as if the walls themselves understood the weight of what had just happened. The captain, crew members, and airport staff stood frozen in a stiff line, their eyes bouncing nervously between Clint Eastwood and the trembling flight attendant who had slapped him only minutes ago. Clint Eastwood adjusted his coat, not out of anger but with the calmness of a man who had already made his decision long before anyone realized his true identity. Power didn't need noise, and he was the living proof of it. The attendant's legs shook as she stepped forward. Her voice cracked like dry wood. Sir, please. I didn't know who you were." He looked at her, really looked at her. Not with rage. Not with pride. But with a steady gaze that felt like a mirror reflecting every choice she had made that day. "That's the thing," he said slowly, voice low but sharp enough to slice through the silence. "You shouldn't have to know who someone is to treat them with basic respect." Her mouth opened, but no words came out. Tears welled in her eyes, dripping past her trembling chin. Behind her, the rest of the crew bowed their heads, ashamed to even meet his gaze. They had laughed with her, mocked with her, supported her cruelty without a second thought. Clint Eastwood turned to the captain. "How long have you been flying for my company?" 27 years, sir," the captain replied, standing straighter. "And in those 27 years, have you ever allowed a passenger to be humiliated the way I was?" The captain swallowed hard. "No, sir. Never. I failed today." Clint Eastwood took a slow breath, letting the silence stretch a little longer. "You didn't fail today," he said. "You failed the moment you let arrogance become normal on your plane." The captain nodded, shame flooding his face. The attendants shifted uneasily. No one dared breathe loudly. Then Clint Eastwood stepped forward, not to punish, not to lash out, but to make a point that would stay with them forever. "You know," he began, "I could fire every one of you on the spot. The board would approve it in 10 minutes. But firing you isn't the lesson. Changing you is." The attendant blinked, confused, hopeful, terrified all at once. Sir. Does that mean I still have a job?" "You do," he said. Her relief lasted exactly 1 heartbeat. "But you'll never work first class again. Not until you learn the value of the people walking into it." Her breath caught in her throat. That was worse than being fired. But she couldn't argue. Not after what she had done. He turned to the crew. "All of you will attend a new training program. Mandatory. Starting tomorrow morning. We're rebuilding the culture of this airline, and I'll personally visit again to see who actually learned the lesson." Every single person nodded vigorously. But he wasn't finished. Clint Eastwood walked to the back, toward the quiet cabin attendant who had been the only one to step in earlier, the only one who dared question what was happening. "You," he said, pointing gently. "What's your name?" "Sir." "I'm Mia," she replied softly. "I'm just a junior attendant." "Not anymore." He handed her a document from his coat, a promotion letter already signed. "You're now the lead attendant of this aircraft." Her eyes widened. A small gasp left her lips. I don't know what to say." "You don't need to say anything. You just did the right thing when everyone else stayed silent. That's enough." She wiped a tear and nodded. Clint Eastwood gave one last look at the group, a look that carried the weight of justice without cruelty, truth without ego. "Remember," he said, walking toward the exit, "power isn't what you show. Power is how you treat the people who can't do anything for you." The hangar doors opened, sunlight flooding in, casting a long shadow behind him as he walked away, quiet, steady, unbothered. A man who didn't need applause. A man who didn't need revenge. A man who owned the plane, and still chose humility. Before he stepped into his car, he turned slightly and added, "For your sake, I hope the next person you judge doesn't end up signing your paycheck." And with that, he was gone, leaving behind the kind of silence that only truth can create. The hangar doors slowly rolled shut behind Clint Eastwood, sealing the stunned crew inside with nothing but their thoughts, their guilt, and the lesson that would echo long after his footsteps faded. Outside, the sunlight reflected off the plane's polished surface, a silent reminder that real power often moves quietly, like a shadow, like a whisper, like a man who chooses dignity over fury. Back inside, no one dared speak. Not the captain. Not the crew. Not the attendant who had slapped him. Every heartbeat felt like a reminder of how close they had come to losing everything because of pride, ego, and a moment of ugly disrespect. And that is where the real message takes shape. Because this story isn't just about an owner walking onto his own plane. It isn't just about a slap or a confrontation. It's about something deeper, something most people forget in their daily rush to feel important. Respect isn't reactive. It's a choice. Clint Eastwood didn't raise his voice. He didn't shove anyone. He didn't fire the whole crew, even though he easily could have. Instead, he showed something far rarer than power. Control. Control over anger. Control over ego. Control over a situation where anyone else might have exploded. And that's the real difference between someone who has power and someone who merely acts powerful. The crew learned that the hard way. The attendant who slapped him now understood the weight of a single moment, how a tiny decision can rewrite your entire future. She thought she was protecting first class. She thought she was enforcing rules. But instead, she was exposing her character. Because the way you treat people who you think have nothing reveals everything about you. And the one person she chose to belittle was the one man who held her entire career in the palm of his hand. The true moral. Respect doesn't start when you know who someone is. Respect starts when you believe every human being deserves it. You never know who you're talking to. You never know whose eyes are watching. You never know which moment will come back to define you. One kind gesture can open doors. One cruel gesture can close them forever. Clint Eastwood could have chosen revenge. But he chose a lesson. He replaced arrogance with accountability. He replaced cruelty with correction. He replaced fear with growth. That's leadership. That's character. That's real class. Because while this might be a dramatic tale, its message belongs to you. Yes, you reading this right now. So let me ask you, if you were in that situation, would you fire the attendant or forgive her? Type fire or forgive in the comments. Let's see where your heart stands. And one more question. Have you ever seen someone mistreated because they looked ordinary? Share your story below. Your experience might be the lesson someone else needs if you believe. Respect should be for everyone. Power should be quiet. Kindness is strength. Arrogance destroys more than it builds. True class comes from character type. Respect in the comments. Share this story with someone who needs a reminder. Follow for more powerful stories like this. And tell me where you're watching from. I want to appreciate you personally. Because this community we're building isn't just about stories. It's about spreading values that the world desperately needs more of. Humility. Strength. Character. Respect. Clint Eastwood walked away from that hangar without a single shout, a single threat, or a single boast. And yet, everyone who witnessed it will remember that moment for the rest of their lives. Not because he owned the plane, but because he owned himself. And that, my friend, is the greatest power any human can have.